Hello everybody and welcome to a new episode on the Alexis and Arabia and Beyond channel. So today we're going to have a look at border disputes in the Arabian Gulf, especially the case of Kuwait. There are many discussions as to whether the drawing of borders by European powers was predominantly negative or whether there were positive aspects to this also British influence. In the case of the Arabian Gulf, this issue deserves a closer examination. This whole discussion about borders raises some very important questions, the first of which is how to regulate ownership of land amongst nomads, in our case Bedouin. Do borders or a lack of them create instability? What kind of borders existed in the Arabian Gulf before the arrival of the British? And what were the British ulterior motives for these borders? Could they limit the influence of certain groups, and which ones, and possibly even other foreign powers? So what was the situation with borders like in the past? In the past, ownership of land was established only if it was used. Abandonment of a certain piece of land would cause conflict because others would think that it was free to take. Eventually, the Omani land laws were formulated, and these would dictate that the dominant tribe may own a piece of land, but an inferior tribe can pay to use it. As tribes moved to another area because it proved more suitable to their livestock, this may cause the change of borders. Regions also became defined by their use, whether they were used by the shepherds or by Bedouin. This would in turn also create an alliance between weaker Bedouin tribes to protect their interests against stronger tribes. Let us now speak about the role and intention of the British when they started creating borders in the region. The first aim was to deny other European countries like Germany and Russia access to the Gulf. The British promised money and powers to the Sheikh of Kuwait, but these were half-hearted so as to not offend the Ottomans. The Ottomans would then discover these secret British-Kuwaiti deals, which led to the Anglo-Ottoman Convention of 1913 and to railway deals. Both the Ottomans and the British had their interests in the region, and Sheikh Mubarak of Kuwait knew how to play the two off against each other. The Ottomans would try to remove Sheikh Mubarak of Kuwait, but the British supported him. This support would also be in the form of creating borders which would prevent invasion from Arab tribes from the interior of the peninsula. And this brings us to the conclusion of our research. We can conclude that the concept of borders was nothing new to these Arab tribes, except that these borders fluctuated more than in other regions of the world. There were also different concepts of what a border should be like, depending on if one was dealing with either nomads or shepherds. The creation of borders would eventually give a certain region independence, and defining territory would, in the case of Arab Gulf countries, often enough reduce the conflict with Arabs from the peninsular interior. The creation of borders by the British would eventually prove the superiority of British diplomacy in the region, and the creation of mutual ties laid additional foundations for stability. On the downside, some territories defined by borders would, for example, win areas with oil fields, but lose fertile ground, for example, and so became states too dependent on oil. And then there were those areas which, through the creation of permanent borders, would end up with territory with very little in the way of revenue generating ground. These emirates would then decline into poverty and dependence on aid from the surrounding emirates. Stay tuned to this channel. In our next episode, we'll discuss the crucial states before the discovery of oil.